Hello guys, welcome to episode 4 of my fat loss phase series. Today I'm going to do just like a little bit of a recap, a little bit of a chatty episode. It won't be too long, but just kind of recap like progress and results and everything, but then just also how I'm feeling, mindset, just a little summary because we're about a month in. Nutella's here, if we cannot see. He is right here, now he's running off. Goodbye, Nutella. So Nutella's here chewing on his toy. I apologize if it's a little bit noisy, but it wouldn't be like Ruby if we didn't have some sort of noise and or a French bulldog in the background. If you guys have not been following along, if you are new here, I have been pursuing fat loss for most of the month, or actually the whole month of July. I did a very intentional muscle gain phase before that. It was really successful, put on a few kilos, clearly put on some muscle. I'm stoked with that. I then went into my fat loss phase on the 1st of July. So I've been doing that now for 4 weeks. So I thought it's a good time to kind of just summarize and recap everything. So I've kind of mentioned in some of the episodes, and if you listen to the Eat Like Ruby podcast, I talk about this heaps over there. And if you're in the Eat Like Ruby fat loss phase, I talk about this heaps in there. But personally and professionally recommending to clients, I don't really look at progress and weight and measurements and all those things too closely in the first few weeks because it's just not enough time to actually assess if they're working. In Eat Like Ruby, in the fat loss phase, we speak so much about assessing progress, how to do so intelligently, all the things we do and don't want to do. There's so much that goes into that. So simply just like being on a diet, watching what the scale does every day is just not intelligent at all. There's so much I could say about that, but if you want to hear more about that, you can listen to the podcast or you can join the Eat Like Ruby Fat Loss phase. But for those first few weeks, for me, it's very much about doing the work, ticking the boxes, following through on the actions of nutrition, movement, steps, training, all the things that I know I need to have in place to achieve the result that I want. We've got to do the work to get the result. There's no point fixating on the result in those initial weeks because we haven't done enough of the work. So that's pretty much the position I've been in all through July, was like do the work, tick the boxes, get the ball rolling. And then once you've done that and you get to a point where it actually makes sense to assess and maybe adjust, that's what we'll do. And that's where we're at right now. So in terms of progress, if you listen to the podcast, you are going to realize right now that I am going to look and sound like a massive liar. Because I said on the podcast probably 2 or 3 weeks ago that anytime I personally go into a deficit, it usually takes a few weeks to get any movement with weight, measurements, etc. In my previous fat loss phases, which I've done most years around this time, like through July and August, I've had a history of absolutely nailing everything for 4 weeks and literally achieving no movement with stats, measurements, weight, all the things. And so I said that on the podcast the other week, how that's really common for me. And it's been a very different outcome this time, which is kind of cool in a way because obviously I've got some progress, I've got things moving, but also like I came out and said that that never happened to me and now it's happened. So when it comes to assessing weight, I think there's a few ways we can do this, and I'm not going to get into this too much today, but if somebody wants to use weight as a form of assessment, we either can or we don't have to. That's completely up to the individual. If we are going to use it, in my opinion, there's a really intelligent way to do so. We want to take it first thing in the morning before we eat, minimal clothing. We want to remove anything that's going to affect the number outside of our body composition. So if we think about clothing or food or having a drink or whatever, that's going to change our weight and therefore kind of change the consistency of us taking it at the same time every day. We also want to take it frequently and assess the average. Weight will fluctuate for so many reasons. I'm not going to get into that. I get into that everywhere else, but it'll fluctuate for so many reasons. So we never want to look at one individual number or just take it one day a week. If you take nothing else from me, take the advice that we do not want to just take weight once a week because it will fluctuate and we want to assess the trend over time, not just a one-off number. So if we're taking weight, I advise to take it multiple times, watch the average and watch the trend over time. In my opinion, no less than 3 weeks. I don't think we can look at a time frame shorter than 3 weeks and assess and say whether something is or isn't working because it's just not enough time to really detect the trend. So I usually say 3 weeks. For me personally, I've done 4 weeks just to really make sure I've got some data and some facts to look at. I didn't take weight too much in those first initial weeks just because I was like, I just want to focus on the actions, getting shit done. I'm not really looking at the outcomes right now. I'm not looking at the progress right now. So I didn't take weight too much. Starting weight on the 30th of June was 68.2. I didn't take it too much. And then I had a weigh-in on the 14th of July. This is quite crazy, which is 2 weeks in, at 65 kilos. So that's 3.2 kilos in 2 weeks, which is too high in my opinion. I'm gonna come back to that. It then went down a bit more, so 64.8, 64.3, 64.2 over like 14th of July, 16th of July, 18th of July, 19th of July. So taking it pretty consistently, not every day, but most days from that point on. And then today I saw it again at 64.8. So it had come down, the lowest I hit was 64.2. Today I'm back at 64.8 and today is 23rd of July. It's clearly come down since I started, but it's still fluctuating like normal weight will, like a normal living, functioning human being will. So if we think about that, the overall drop is about 3.5 kilos in 4 weeks, which like I said, I personally think is too high. I professionally think it's too high for someone of my size. Ideally, I think we like to lose about 0.5 to 1% of body weight a week is a healthy rate of loss. So that's, for me, be looking around like 300 to 600 grams a week. This is more like 800 to 900. The reason I don't like it and the reason I think it's too high is because I know that's not all body fat. And there's so much to talk about there. I'll probably talk about this more on the podcast. So definitely check out the podcast if you don't already. But there would have been some initial drop there from just food mass, muscle glycogen. Obviously my intake was a lot higher and I did a big drop from like my gaining phase into my fat loss phase. So there's going to be a big drop in just the overall food mass, food volume, fluid, muscle glycogen, things like that, actually just sitting in my system. Nothing to do with body fat or even really to do with body composition. That's all just like loose, fluidy, excess weight that would move quite quickly when we think about dropping from nearly 3,000 calories a day to 1,600. Huge drop. So it makes sense that there's been a big weight drop, but it wouldn't be a lot of body fat. And if I really think about my goals are fat loss, not weight loss. I don't really care if I lose much weight because my goal is to actually maintain as much muscle as I can while dropping a bit of body fat. So seeing big weight drops too big too often is just going to be a sign that I'm losing more than body fat, which to me means to scale it back a bit because we don't want to drop weight from things that we don't actually want to be dropping, like muscle. If we think about wanting to be lean and toned and have shape and all those things, I don't want to be dropping muscle at all. And then it's like, well, what was the point of a muscle gain phase if I'm now going to drop it all off? My hunger, energy, strength, training, performance, all those things haven't been too bad. I feel like my energy has maybe been a little bit lower than normal. That's probably the only thing I've noticed. Training has been wicked. I've been really mindful to not just fall into the mentality of like, oh, I'm on low calories, so training's gonna go to shit. I've still been getting after it. I've been hitting some PBs, like training's really good. Hunger's like there, but I just don't really give it much thought. Like it makes sense that I'm hungry when we think about that big calorie drop. So I don't really give that too much thought at all. And then sometimes it's just the energy, like towards the end of the day, I'll just be like, I'm done. I'm bloody done. And normally I don't really have feelings like that. So that's probably the only thing I've noticed. But then again, I don't really stress about it or give it too much thought because it makes a lot of sense that I'm tired. And I feel like I have lower energy because I'm consuming a lot less energy. Funny that. In terms of dropping, like shifting that weight so quickly compared to how I normally would, there's a couple of reasons I think that happened. I'll try and be really brief, but in the past, I've actually started on a little bit of a higher intake in a fat loss phase to see if I could achieve fat loss on a higher intake. And what I mean there is like in previous phases, I might have started on like 2,000 or 1,900 and just watched what happened. And then if I felt like I need to lower it, then I would lower it. The reason for that is because if we think about, let's say I did a month on 1,900 calories and I achieved really awesome fat loss and was getting the results that I wanted, that's freaking awesome. And if I never had to drop to 1,600, that's such a win. So it's cool to do that at times and really just see. I think when people do that, if they have a few weeks or a month or something where they attempt a higher intake and watch like if it works, and it doesn't, people can get really shitty and think like, oh, that's a waste of a month. I don't think that's a waste of a month, because like best case scenario, it does work. And then you're like, oh, I can actually achieve the result that I want by eating more food. Like that's such a win. And if that doesn't happen, like, yeah, it's unfortunate, but it's cool information to have and it's cool to know. And then you can just know, okay, cool, I do need to drop things down to get the ball rolling. So that has absolutely been the case for me in the last like 3 fat loss phases I've done. With this one, I had done that too many times. I was like, I know I actually don't achieve fat loss up on those calories. So I went straight to 1600, which I would normally go to after about 4 or 5 weeks. So that's why I feel like, obviously I've skipped like that. I've just gone into a bigger deficit, really, is what I'm trying to say. I've gone into a bigger deficit a lot quicker than I normally would have. The other thing is, for the last 3 weeks of my muscle gain phase, I actually pretty much ate my deficit food, just a higher amount. So the actual foods that I've been eating in my deficit, I was eating them all through June as well, like the exact same day, same grocery shopping, everything, just bigger servings. I don't feel like that's, you know, as a nutritionist in a sciencey way, there's nothing in that that I can sort of say would like get results happening faster. But for me personally, I just felt like I kind of was prepping my body in a way, and that just kind of helped get shit moving a little bit quicker. But I would say it was just the big jump into the clear deficit without like easing into it. She's about 3.5 kilos down in 4 weeks. I am not going to change those targets just yet. The reason being is I think it's slowing down. I think I had the initial big drops, shit really got moving. I don't think I'm gonna see like another 2 kilos in the next 2 weeks. If I do, I will absolutely increase my intake, like 100%, and I'll keep you guys in the loop if that happens. Just piecing all that together, I should really see things slow down, probably have a little bit smaller drops over the next few weeks, but know that they're actually coming from body fat now, which is cool. So I'll keep you in the loop and we'll see what happens there. If it's big drops, I'll absolutely increase my intake a little bit more. If things slow down and become a bit more steady, that's perfect. That's great feedback that she's in a good spot. In the next few weeks, I think I'll cover all these things, because what I'm thinking is when I do make an increase, I'll probably bring in a couple of higher days. And that might be based around like heavy days, leg days, high training days, anything like that. If I feel like I get the signals and the feedback that I can increase my intake a little bit and like minimize my deficit, I'll look at doing some intentionally higher days to support training. But when that is, will just depend on how things move over the next few weeks. I've been using measurements as well. They have dropped a little bit, of pretty expected drops with those. A little bit off the mid, a little bit off the hips, a little bit off the thighs. I don't feel like we see crazy measurements in 3 to 4 weeks, which makes sense. But like if you start to just see a little bit, especially off midsection, that's usually a good sign. And then pics and videos are honestly the #1 thing for me to assess progress, because I don't really care what I weigh. I don't really care what my measurements are. I care how I look, especially when I think about doing a muscle gain phase and doing a photo shoot and all these things. I don't care if I'm 50 kilos or 80 kilos. If I love the physique, I don't care what the weight is or what the measurements are. So that's my real focus. So I've really been watching those physique videos. Right now is Tuesday Arvo. I'm going to take physique videos in the morning. I like to do them in the morning for the same reason that I pretty much said with the scales. Before you eat, before you drink, then you can know that they're quite consistent. Like I said, I'll keep you guys in the loop over the next week or two about how that scale keeps progressing, how everything else keeps progressing. And then we can just see, do we think the deficit is a little bit big and I want to scale it back a bit? Do things slow down and it actually proves to be just quite a sweet spot and a good deficit? Time will tell. And what I always say to everyone is keep focused on the things you can control. Like I can keep nailing nutrition, keep nailing steps, keep nailing training, and then watch what happens with my body's response, progress, results, all those things, and then adjust accordingly. That is literally how I operate for a whole fat loss phase. It's not emotional, it's not stressful, it's not hoping, wishing, it's nothing sporadic. It's literally like tick the boxes, do the work, assess how things respond, adjust if needed, repeat. She's a month in, good first month, feeling quite good overall, and then I will be back next week. I'll do some more fun videos and I'll keep you guys in the loop the whole way. with any adjustments, progress, anything at all. So stay tuned for all those things. Make sure you like, subscribe, follow on Instagram, listen to the podcast, do all the things, and I will be back next week.